Live reports on Southwest Washington High School football come from reporter Bryan Levesque. Check out GSHLFootball.com for more. The Fan postgame scoreboard show continues on ESPN Sports Radio 1080 The Fan.
10:33 here in our Fan studios, coming to you tonight on 9:10 a.m. as well as 1080thefan.com. Thanks to all of those who've been streaming our action tonight. And if you're on the web, you want to go to GSHLFootball.com and see all the goodies that Bryan Levesque has there for you. Not just stats, not just scores, great video, great analysis of everything going on. He's still there up there at the McKenzie Stadium because Union just won't let everybody go home. They need to score some more. It was getting out of hand earlier, and Bryan joining us now with the very latest. Union just putting on a show, creeping up those top 10 rankings now at the 4A level.
Yeah, they finally got back in the top 10 this week after they improved to 4-1. They're a minute and 25 seconds away from being 5-1. Right now it's 56-14 on Heritage. Game got ugly pretty quickly there. Let me see here. Zach Browning pretty much put on a show again. I mean, you know, he was in your game against West. You had the 4 touchdowns. Followed that with 4 touchdowns against Kelso. He's got a 5-yard touchdown run, a 35-yard touchdown run, a 1-yard touchdown run, a 21-yard interception return for a touchdown, and he almost had a 35-yard touchdown reception. He fell down at the 1 after breaking about 5 tackles. But Brandon Brodyheim has a couple touchdowns. The only thing Heritage has going for him so far, after Browning returned a 21-yard interception in the third quarter, Raheem Perry took the next kickoff 78 yards for a touchdown, and then again following Union scored again, and then they got the ball back on punts, and then Carey intercepted a pass, ran it back 81 yards for a touchdown. So pretty much Heritage has been held in check offensively. So it's 3 weeks in a row that now Union's defense hasn't allowed a point. Obviously, the team gave up 14. We got 40 seconds to go in the game here, so the band might kick on. But at halftime, we texted you that the statistical yards. I know Heritage, I think it was 251 to 25 for your total yards at the halftime. It's been pretty much the same here. Heritage might have had another 70 in this one, but Union pretty much wanted to make a statement in this game that their first league game of the year.
Especially coming on the heels of Skyview shutting out Battleground 52. Oh, we lost Bryan there real quick. We'll see if we can get him back. But Skyview hammered Battleground 52-zip last night. Some other scores, 3A action. Camas, no problem with Hudson's Bay, 66-14. Other 3A league games, Columbia River, 27-21. Prairie really fighting back in this one. It took a late, they got it back tied at 21, and then a late touchdown from Columbia River, the distance. Mountain View, the Thunder, Souk will be happy, 56-7, no problems with Fort Vancouver. 2A scores, R.A. Long cruising past Woodland, 56-7. You heard earlier the game before this at McKenzie Stadium, Kelso handling Evergreen 21-13, and we bring back Bryan Levesque there from GSHLFootball.com, just talking Union really watched Skyview put it on Battleground last night, and important for them to establish as they look towards that end of season meeting for the 4A title, that they're up for what the Storm has to offer.
Yeah, I think, again, Skyview looked real impressive last night. And even with as impressive as that was, they had almost every other play that they would get a 15-yard gain. It was called back on what seemed to be a phantom call. It was kind of sad in the game that the refs were doing such a thing like that. A couple different kids had touchdowns, got called back. I mean, obviously it didn't matter as a team, but it's unfortunate for those kids. But yeah, Kieran McDonough with his second full game of quarterback this week, and he had 12-15 for 133 yards and a couple of touchdowns Friday. Skyview looks like they're getting it on track. They're 2-0 in league. Union is now 1-0 in league. I don't see anybody beating either of them. And week 9 here, again, second half of a doubleheader, I think that's going to be a really good game.
Well, we've got at the 3A level, Camas looks like they're the real deal. They cruise again tonight over Hudson's Bay. I don't know if anybody's going to stop them on their way. The question, as always, is can they stay focused enough and not take a week off?
Yeah, and that's the thing. Tonight, even they actually were 14-14 with Hudson's Bay early in the game, and then obviously turned it on, and they ended up with a 66-14 win. So, that's the thing is they're going to have to keep focused. And unfortunately, even watching Kelso play here today, Kelso's going to have to get a lot better if they even want a chance in that Week 9 game with Camas. But the thing is, sometimes when you play lesser opponents for 6 weeks, and this Heritage team goes out there next week to Camas, when you play those lesser opponents 5-6 weeks in a row, and then all of a sudden you get into the playoffs, it's sometimes hard to make that adjustment. So hopefully, like I said, in practice they can keep it going, but that'll definitely be the question mark for Camas going into the playoffs.
Tight one there. Columbia River got a stiff challenge from Prairie tonight, but not quite enough.
Yeah, they ended up getting that win 27-21. It was 21-21, and then Columbia River sacked Prairie's quarterback, went down. Kawawaki got the touchdown there. Prairie had a chance with about 2 minutes to go, made it to midfield, but turned the ball over on downs. So they're pretty much eliminated from the playoffs with their third loss. Columbia River's barely hanging on. Columbia River still plays Mountain View, and that's going to be their only chance, is hoping that Kelso can beat Mountain View and they can beat Mountain View for River to get in. But the loser of that game, which ended up being Prairie, almost wrote their check that they're not going to get into the playoffs this year.
Yeah, Mountain View strong, 56-7 over Fort Vancouver. Can the Thunder break up the Kelso-Camas thing? Can they throw a monkey wrench into this thing?
Well, they've already lost to Camas. I think they can. I think Mountain View is better than Kelso. And that game's going to be down here. It's actually next week. They play each other, I believe. But yeah, they had tonight Reynolds, the running back. They scored 1, 2. They scored a lot of different ways. Quarterback Ryan Hansen threw 2 touchdowns. A couple weeks ago in their win against Heritage, Mountain View, Ryan Hansen was 0 for 3 passing. So to have a 42 and a 20-yard touchdown pass, a significant difference there. Mountain View's looking really good. Fort Vancouver is starting to really show that maybe a couple of their early wins were based on who they played, not necessarily the caliber of their team, unfortunately.
2A level, R.A. Long and Mark Morris with easy victories again tonight. How do these two teams, traditionally they've been the best at the 2A level of recent times, how do they stack up, and when do they take on each other?
Well, they play Week 9, and what they call the Civil War up there, the big R, in Longview, they're the two schools there. Mark Morris's game against Hawkinson, they're actually down 10-3 at one point. They played each other 2 weeks ago because of the only having 5 teams in that conference and having to pick up a 5th non-league game in Week 5 is kind of hard to do. So they ended up having to play each other twice this year. So this game was as a non-league game. I don't know, but I would assume Mark Morris had some backups playing in this game, still beat Hawkinson. Hawkinson's playing almost all freshmen. They're going to be good in a couple years, but this year they're really struggling. R.A. Long, again, Woodland, a really young team, so they got the 48-6 win there. But I think that's going to be a really good game. Mark Morris moved their running back, Jeremy Wolf, the quarterback, a couple of weeks ago, and they're really taken off. They kind of run a wing tee, a little bit of hybrid, but having him be able to run the ball out of that, and having Dan Feeney, their fullback, is leading the 2A in rushing. And they got 3 or 4 other guys that can run the ball. R.A. Long is doing pretty good. Their quarterback, Alton Wagdahl, is actually leading the 2A with the best quarterback percentage. The Woodland quarterback is way ahead in yards, but he's got like 10 touchdowns and 12 interceptions. But I think it's going to be a really good game. Unfortunately, seeing how R.A. Long already went and got thumped by Centralia, and seeing Tumwater come down here and obviously take apart Hawkinson, but still seeing how good they are, and knowing that those two aren't even the 2 best teams from the Evergreen Conference, the WF West is in there also. We get the 2-2As into the playoffs. They're going to have to play the lower 2 of those. There's 3 teams ranked in the top 10. I wouldn't be surprised if both R.A. Long and Mark Morris get bounced in that preliminary round, unfortunately.
Well, it should set up, as you mentioned, Mountain View Kelso, really the highlight game next week up there at the 3A level. Kelso, the challenge, if they can get past the Thunder, then they'll get their shot at the end of the season to see if they can upset Camas.
Yeah, Kelso, Evergreen held them in check for a long time here today, and it was just, they threw that interception, Thomas did, but he threw a couple touchdowns. I just think right now, seeing the way that Mountain View held Union last week to 10 points, and the fact that Heritage and Mountain View beat Heritage, and then, Union put up 56 on, you can't say this game and that game equals that game, but having watched both of them live, Mountain View is really starting to come together as the season progresses. So, I picked them to win. They're at home tomorrow. Or I will pick them to win. I haven't picked them yet, but I think they'll win that game. But I think Kelso definitely has the athletes to win the game, but they're going to not – they can't make any mistakes.
Should be great fun. Of course, GSHLFootball.com. Not just scores and stats, but you'll get Player of the Week interviews. You'll get full video from games that you're at, the key games. Doing a great job up there, and we appreciate you dropping in, helping us out every Friday night. Brian, we'll talk to you next week.
All right, sounds good, Swag.
All righty, Bryan Levesque, GSHLFootball.com.